I know that this is exactly what you guys wanted to see today. You're like, Bagel, please, please tell us we have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm so excited. I want to feel like I'm back in 7th grade again. Guys, don't worry. We have a PowerPoint presentation today. The reason that we're doing a PowerPoint presentation, I know. But the reason we're doing a PowerPoint presentation is that we may actually have a balance patch coming up soon based on what Com2uS said in the last, I don't know if it was the last developer note or there was update notes, and they said somewhere in there that they wanted to do more frequent balance patches. But we do potentially have a balance patch coming up, which is crazy to think because we just got one not that long ago, but this is based on something that they said. So let's read this so that we don't deviate off topic. Based on the developer note from a couple months back, Com2uS themselves mentioned they wanted to do more frequent balance patches and outlined a timeline they proposed to do so. Based on their proposed schedule, the next patch should be happening soon. So I believe that it might actually be happening soon, not based on just what they said, but based on the fact that there is another game that could be a little bit of a competition for them, that they might want to release something at the same time as this other game to get people excited about Summoner's War, right? So it just so happens that a couple weeks from now, the proposed balance patch date coincides with the release of the new Pokemon game. Now, I know it's not the same console, I know it's a mobile game, but we have seen, oh, actually, I think I mentioned this in the next slide. While a big release on a completely different platform might not be a direct competitor to Summoner's War, we all know that when Genshin Impact was released, the active player base for Summoner's War and other mobile gacha games took a big hit. I'm sure Com2uS wants to avoid another potential player drop-off by, why did I say it like that? By releasing a potentially above-average balance patch on the same day or a couple days prior to the Pokemon release to keep players engaged in Summoner's War, if even just temporarily. And guys, I think most people know this at this point, but Summoner's War and Pokemon have a big cross-section of players that play both of them, that are interested in both of them. When Pokemon Go first came out, the whole Summoner's War community was talking about, maybe not the whole Summoner's War community, but much of the Summoner's War community was talking about Pokemon Go, was excited about that. There is a big cross-section of, it's a monster collector game where you battle each other's monsters. Of course, there's going to be a big cross-section, right? So anyway, I forget what the next one is. Oh, I know we all want our shiny rare toys to be buffed to OPG 3 levels, but rather than talk about making currently usable units OP, we should be considering making mostly useless units usable. Although there are some in here that you could argue that they are already useful, and we're just splitting hairs and like trying to make them OP. You could argue that. Here's some things I should be priority. Okay, let's get to the first. Oh, you guys are gonna hate me. You guys are going to hate me because I can't figure out where this slide is. I know that every time someone says nerf Wusa, everyone freaks out. They're like, no, you don't need to nerf Wusa. They didn't need to buff Wusa in the first place. That's kind of the thing. Overbuffed and dumped. It's in almost 80% of matches, guys. If it is the most picked unit in RTA, generally, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but generally that means that the unit is very strong. Generally, that means, I mean, yeah, he does have counters. I'm not saying he doesn't have counters, but mathematically superior in stats and skills. He provides a lot. He's got crazy base speed. He's very easy to fix. I'm not saying nerf him to the ground. Either one more turn cooldown on skill 2 or less damage. That would make him closer to what he was before. That would still give him the pure damage with skill 2, but it would just be less mathematically overvalued, right? So I'm not trying to say like nerf Wusa to the ground. I don't. Oh, also I should mention Nigong should not be nerfed in the process. I think Nigong is in a good space. I think Nigong needed a little bit of a buff. So it's nice to see Nigong actually being more useful. Wusa is very strong. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. 19 Camila. I think everyone can agree with me. I know some people polarized on the Wusa nerf, but guys, it's picked in almost 80% of RTA matches. I don't know how otherwise to say that it's picked in almost 80%. It's the first pick this season and last season too. Camila was once a superior top-tier arena defense unit. You don't really see Camila in almost anywhere anymore. Like, you see Camila for like some Bruiser, Guild Siege offenses. Aside from that, there's too many counters now. Once a superior top-tier arena defense unit with the addition of new units, Meta Shift's Camille utility has dropped significantly. She can probably withstand a sizable buff without being broken. And I'm talking about a buff to her passive. Although, I mean, skill 2 you can buff too. The skill 2s on these Valkyrias aren't... I mean, they did get some buffs. They also increased the cooldown. I feel like that never actually activates, the cooldown increase with the skill 1. But that was... It's a small chance, though. Small chance, but... Yeah, I mean, they could even buff the skill 2s even more. They could buff more of these than just those. But anyway, Camilla's almost nowhere. I think that there's a good argument. I think anyone would agree with that. So the next one is Nora. I have a Nora. I fully Devilmon her. Have you seen any Nora videos on the channel? I was like, hey, I recorded. I was trying to make her. And I'm like, why would I use her over anything else? For the most part, why would anyone use Nora over other stuff? If she's going to be, like, she kind of lacks a clear identity and purpose, which I mentioned down here. But if she's going to be an aggressive stripper, she needs to be faster, and she needs a more meaningful strip into something that's more effective. More than just a heal block. She's going to be a turn 2 passive debuffer because she does dots when she's attacked. I mean, it's the same thing as the Wind Mummy, but aside from Punisher's Crypt, what else do you really see Wind Mummy being used for? So yeah, she just strip and debuff the enemy when attacked, and passive improved. So either one or the other. Either take her in one direction as a more aggressive unit, or another direction as a more passive turn 2 kind of unit. So I think that she just needs to be focused. We should get through these faster because we're already 6 minutes into the video. Okay, Christina, the poster child for lacking identity and purpose. A similar thing. If she's a turn 2 bruiser, she needs passive improvement to keep her alive. If she's a turn 1 cleaver, passive needs to not even be a thing or repurposed into something else. She lacks clear identity and purpose. Wants to be a turn 2 bruiser, but not fully. Same thing with Lewis. Well, actually, not the same thing with Lewis. This is a unit that I've said needs to be buffed for quite a long time. Most people don't care about Lewis either way, but most people are also not building Lewis and have no interest in building Lewis. The further we go into changing metas, the more ideas we have to draw from for a Lewis buff, namely some passive attack bar increase, heal, and cleanse kind of thing. That here's the thing, a lot of times when units need to be buffed, they can do things passively to them to make them more viable. So I think just adding more passive stuff to some of these units could make them actually useful and with less thought put in there. So yeah, I think that a lot of these are just could use passive stuff. Brian and even the other Death Knights, Revivers are always boring. We talk about this every month. He needs something proactive in his kit, not just reactive skill after you've already. He was a big thing back in the day, and now he's a nothing. So not just reactive skill after you've already losing, which doesn't stop. It doesn't stop you from losing more. Like if we see Vanessa useful after her passive. What else? Triana passive, death prevention, Nana passive, change to a passive, or no, it was always a passive, change to stacks 1 at the beginning of every turn, so the passive is already activated, which was such an easy way to buff Nana. It really was such the easiest, the fastest, like, oh, just give her 1 stack. Start the match with 1 stack. It was that easy to make her meta. It was really that easy. Sometimes they just need sometimes, I'm sorry, I get ahead of myself. Sometimes they just need little things to make them useful. So, either passive addition or the ability to do skill 3, have skill 3 do something when the allies aren't dead. So I think a lot of these things are just, again, more in the situation of like if they're supposed to be healers, cleansers, revivers, have them activate something passively. So, turn 2 units, passive is very strong there. Trinity Jaara, which we keep saying, we keep talking about Trinity Jaara every month. The same thing we keep talking about, change to attack type unit and give Trinity a reason to be picked over Samoth with skill 3. It's fairly straightforward. We've talked about it a million times. Jaara may be great with with as little as just the same revive passes Perna has. If Jaara comes back from the dead once, that could make Jaara just so useful, right? Let me know if you guys agree, the Jaara owners. Let me know if you agree with that. So the Onmyujis, most of them, they are already somewhat buffed, right? They are already buffed. They were trying to actually buff them the next patch or the last patch. I think that they will probably buff them the next patch too. So we should see some kind of modification, as I also mentioned down here. They've improved. They're getting closer. They just need some more tweaks. They're getting there though, right? Next one, Water and Wind Chun-Li or Blade Dancers, the same unit. Either more damage output or more meaningful debuffs. Light and dark ones are fine. It's mostly the water and wind ones. Or I can use something, but it's still more usable than water or wind. Again, we talked about this before. Robos! Sorry for yelling into the mic, kind of. I think they have potential, just need some more tweaking. Water doesn't do enough damage. I built water, I was playing around with water. It's still too easy to kill at 1 HP afterwards. it's not it's not a thing that's being used anywhere, right? It's a newer unit. It's not a thing that's being used anywhere. Fire has some very crazy potential. It just needs to do more when he steals turns. And then the Wind and Dark are a good start. Maybe buffing Blade Crush, the second skill. Second skill is an AoE strip. I think it does a 30% activation. I'm not sure what it is after skills, but it has this chance to, it's an AoE skill, has a chance to strip one thing, right? With each attack. So I don't know after sculpts what it is, but I think maybe 50 or something like that. But still, it's not like, it's not strip and pushback or strip and absorb or strip and stun or strip or anything else, and it's not like a guaranteed strip of one beneficial effect even. So yeah, they have potential, but I think buffing that second skill could effectively buff all the ones that could or I mean they all kind of could. Light seems good because light does kind of the same thing as the water. Doesn't explode and then come back from the dead. It just explodes, but also does attack bar manipulation when it does that. So I think that one has more potential than the water one. The water one just doesn't. Like, he comes back and then you're like, tap him with anything, and he's dead again. So yeah, I think that Blade Crush might be the best way to do something with those. And then yeah, the water one has potential. It's just still needs some tweaking. Fire Dhalsim Poison Master. This is a unit that you build, like, you don't, like, what? We've talked about it many times. The most niche unit ever, and doesn't even work in the niche situation half the time. He's good for things that do a lot of poison damage onto you. A lot of dots continuous damage onto you. And then he throws it back. And when he's in that one specific situation, he works. If he's not in that specific situation, sometimes he doesn't work. But many times he works, but if he's not, like, that's like you use him in against like Arika in siege defense if someone puts Arika in siege defense. So, at the very least, make him some really great counter to siege meta, even if that's his only purpose. That's what I mean for some of these 4 stars, as long as they're useful in like guild siege or like a dungeon, if they're like really good in a specific dungeon or really good in TOA or really good in something, like, just, even if it's niche, like, at least make him like really good for a niche specific person, like Windy. Windy's got purpose now. Windy can't be defense broken, so now Windy has purpose. Let's start doing this a little faster. Probably all the Kung Fu girls. So, skill 3 buffs. Skill 1 is fine, skill 2 is fine. They do the revenge, they proc those. Skill 1 to skill 2, that could be too broken if they make it any stronger, right? As far as like revenging, going crazy, doing all this stuff. So fire, 50% chance to activate, prolonging the debuffs on the enemies. Could just make it 100% chance. That's a buff, right? Wind for block skill, block beneficial effect, skill 3. Do a strip. She does do a strip and block with skill 2, but she doesn't do a strip and block in skill 3. Skill 3 strip and block would be even cooler. So we could do a wind buff that way. Dark 25%. Dark has always been so RNG. I know Comptos loves RNG, but RTA players don't love RNG. Where people just like offense in general, like you don't want RNG. You don't want to be like, I'm going into this, I might win, I might lose. You may as well pick anything if you might win or might lose. You may as well just like, well, I'm just gonna throw anything in there. Like, you can't rely on it, which has always been the situation with the Dark Kung Fu girl. And I finally got her the other day, like a month ago, or whenever we did the light and dark fed like all the net 5s for the LD units on that account. We finally got her. And I already knew beforehand, I'm like, I already know I'm going to be disappointed by the amount of defense she ignores. I feel like as soon as you bring her into RTA, because I tried this in RTA, she doesn't ignore defense on anything. It feels like that. I'm sure every so often she does ignore defense, but it's like, you blow a skill 3, and you got Lucian there, he AoE, ignore defense, guaranteed. You got an LD4, which is even more rare, and it's like, I'm going to hit random targets, and I may ignore defense, and I mean, you could even say... You could even go further than 35% chance for ignore. I'm being not even very generous. I'm being very stingy saying 35%. You could say 50, you could say 75. You could go much higher than that. 25 is insane. So, actually, hold on. I might be looking at the, I might be looking at the pre-skill ups, but it's still a very low chance either way. Light one has a 25% chance to absorb, should be a 50% absorb. Just buffs to their activation rates overall. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying buffing their activation rates overall for skill 3s. It's not anything too crazy. I will go yell at myself and look at the Dark Kung Fu girl after this and be like, oh, you got the specific numbers wrong. And then I'll hate myself, and then I'll go cry in the corner. Just like every day, though. It's the same as every day. Okay, so garbage coils, which is what I'm going to call them now, which is, I know you guys are going to call them that after this. So aside from the wind, which is actually usable, most of these are unused. Base speed is crap. It's 93. I actually have them pulled up here. 93 base speed. Will they become too OP if they started the match in Stone State? I think that people, including myself, have already mentioned this before. I feel like we must have mentioned this before, is like, what if they just started the match in Stone State? All of them would actually be great cleave counters if they simply started the match in Stone State. So I do have this, which we will... I said we're going to make this fast. I said we're going to make this fast. But imagine if he started the match in Stone State, right? 93 base speed. He's not going to outspeed anything. He should just start in Stone State. Stone State, if your turn ends with a 70% or higher HP, you'll be turned into a statue until the next turn starts. The damage dealt on allies will be greatly reduced. Or reduced gradually, if the ally gets attacked with multiple hits when you are turned into a statue. Everything multi-hits now. Everything because additional damage, so everything multi-hits. So this is already going to be damage dealt on allies reduced at the very beginning of the match. That's great. That's great against cleaves. Like, we need to... Some people can be like, Bagel, don't kill cleaves even further. They already killed cleaves. Don't kill them even more. Please, don't do that. Tenzate, which is nothing already, right? No one even knows what his name is. Really, no one even knows what his... I didn't even know what his name was. That's how I know that. Statue of Robust passive. If your turn ends with less than HP, turned into a statue until next turn. So target that, again, we're talking about starting in Stone State. Targets that attack you will have its attack power decreased for 2 turns when the target attacks you when you're turned into a statue. Man, this would be very strong if this was... I mean, the counter to it would be Will Runes, but this would still be strong if it started the match in Stone State. Okay, so another one that would be definitely more usable. This one would just reflect damage, right? Reflect damage based on his defense. He wouldn't be like crazy OP in Stone State. He would just be more... I mean, he's already good, right? He's already usable, but he would be even more usable. We got this one. Turned into a statue increases the skill cooldown time of the target that attacks you by 2 turns. Cooldown time can be increased over the max cooldown time. Imagine if a Samoth attacks you with this, and then you kill the Samoth. Samoth doesn't come back from the dead. Perna doesn't come back from the dead. These guys in Stone State would be so useful. They would be so great against turn 1 aggressive cleaves. That's all they need to do. And maybe, here's the thing. Maybe Comtos actually knows this, and they release these monsters knowing that all they have to do is flip a switch and say Stone State immediately when the match starts, and then 5 units that really not too many people are using. People using the wind one, a couple of the light dark ones here or there. I used the fire one because I'm ridiculous. But aside from that, like, they just flip a switch, and then the units are useful, and then they're good. They're good. They would be good units. Like, starting the match with this, I mentioned it in this slide, but I wonder if that would actually be too OP if we did that. And then this one, we got when your turn ends, turned into a statue, 30% chance. You can't get defeated when you're turned into a statue. So you could be just turn 1, he can't be defeated. Like, he just can't be defeated. So, yeah, just some things, some food for thought. Where's the thing? That I think these units would just all of a sudden all be meta if they're in Stone State when the match starts. They have 93 base HP, base speed, so they're not going to, like, aside from that, they're not going to take a turn when they need to. Or maybe Comtois started them out in Stone State, and then they were like, wow, these guys are too OP, and then they switched it. When they were testing it, they're like, we can't start them in Stone State. That would be too OP. Maybe that could be. I'm just trying to think about it from all sides. That could be their strategy to flip a switch and make these units useful all of a sudden by starting in Stone State. Or they could have already had that in place, had that in mind when they released the units. And then at the very last minute, they were like, let's not do them in Stone State because we'll have to nerf them and people will complain. So maybe they actually were trying to be thoughtful. So anyway, let's go on to the next one because we spent so much time on that. Undines, let's just go super fast. Most of these could use a buff and not be anything crazy. Dark Eye, interesting buff last patch. Wind is fine, mostly light fire. Light has a lot of potential. I'll be definitely interested in a buff to the light one because I already think that she's got potential, but yeah. She strips everything with skill 1, by the way. They have some promise already. Buffs could make them very... Unless skill 1 got changed at some point in the past. Sometimes I think of, like, old skills, and then, like, they get tweaked sometime, and then I'm, like, still thinking of the old ones before the tweak. There's a lot of monsters to keep track of, though. But anyway, I know I've done that with a couple monsters already. That I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of the one that was like 9 months ago. That was the skills, but they changed it like 6 months ago, etc., etc. So, yeah. What's the next one? Next one is this is 6 through 2. Thabei, Dorothy, Celia. Dorothy is the light mage. Celia, Sun Zheng Lao, and Craig. Craig is the light slayer. Thabei, what if you also increased attack bar? I was trying to think of different buffs to Thabei, and they did actually buff him a couple times recently, if I believe. So what if they also increased the attack? But everyone's still like, buff Thabei more. He's the only thing with an AoE brand. That's very strong with Lucian. If you're not using, if you have Thabei and you're not using a Thabei Lucian team, consider using a Thabei Lucian team. Brand on top. The defense break doesn't do anything for Lucian, but a brand is actually going to work on Lucian, right? So at least consider that. Yeah, so either strip into a brand, that would be cool, or a, like even if it's even if it's just like Wilburns, strip one beneficial effect and then do a brand. That could make it very useful, right? So you can just bast it Thabei Lucian, and you're set. So we have that, either strip or increase attack bar of the team. I think strip would actually be more beneficial, even if it's just like one beneficial effect. Dorothy, more damage, added debuff for skill 3, something like that. She does damage based on enemy destroyed HP, but I don't feel like it's anything crazy. A lot of people are kind of disappointed by Dorothy that got Dorothy. Celia, so I have an interest personally because I have this unit. Random beneficial effect on random enemy. I mean, they already nerfed her. Like, she was good in the beginning, but she kind of fell out of meta a little bit, and now they nerfed her. Well, actually, not now, but like a year and a half, 2 years. Maybe like 2 years ago they nerfed her. Something like that. It's been a while since they nerfed her. It was probably 2 years ago. But yeah, she does, like, for her sleep on skill, too, because they want them to nerf Sonnet, so they nerfed Sonnet and Celia. I just think that I'm not saying that she deserves the world. I'm just saying, like, if it's going to be, it's a one random beneficial effect on one enemy, especially in the Wusa meta, especially with a lot of other beneficial effects, not just Wusa. Just one on one random unit kind of does nothing most of the time. So, all beneficial effects, I think, I would like to see that. So, maybe I'm just being greedy. I don't feel like I'm being greedy at all. Celia owners, what do you feel? Should ask the Celia owners. Of course they're gonna say, they could be like, no, she should be buffed so much more. But yeah, even though skill 2 is nerfed. So Sun Zheng Lao activation. So here's one of the things. I look at Sun Zheng Lao, I'm like, he's got great base speed, he's got cool skills. The thing that Sun Zheng Lao owners complain about is his activation rate. And also they like to compare it to the Light Monkey. And Light Monkey's insane. Light Monkey's one of the best LD5s in the game. I'll just be honest, he's one of the best LD5s in the game. Activation rate, at the very least, he should be 100% activation rate. Compared to the Light Monkey, he's like if you try to compare the Light Monkey skill 3 and Sun Zheng Lao skill 3, it's nowhere near enough, Sun Zheng Lao. So I think at least giving him 100% activation rate, make him at least reliable or somewhat, because you still can get resisted. So that's not even saying it much. Right, Craig has his skill 3. He increases attack bar. He's got a 98 base speed if I recall correctly. He has a 50% attack bar boost. He also absorbs. I'm sorry if I'm getting these numbers slightly wrong. Absorbs 40% of the HP from his allies. So and he has a speed buff and an attack power buff. Whereas you take a look at something like Bastet. Okay, she shields. She doesn't do a speed buff, but she does do an attack power buff. But she provides protection instead of leeching HP. And then you look at Kali, which has a speed buff, and invincibility for herself for 2 turns. It's not an LD, right? Not an LD5, it's just a two-way unit. So attack buff, speed buff, invincibility for 2 turns. You look at Craig, and you're like, he's speed buff, attack buff. Okay, same and same. He increases the attack bar, but he also at the cost of 40% of the allies' HP. So it just seems not what it should be. And then the first one is some of the meta 2As. We have more, don't worry. We have more. Wind Grim Reaper, give us a reason to use him instead of Lucian Copper, etc. I mean, he had some promise. He does good damage, but he just needs no one's using him. No one's doing anything with him. Water Grim never saw the utility as the others from the same utility as the others from the beginning. Light Pixie Revivers are meh unless they're passives. You could just add a passive to her, do something passively, would make her more useful. Wind High Elemental has a lot of promise, right? A lot of promise because it teams up with an ally and increases the attack gauge and also is a guaranteed crit. They have to be cautious with a buff to that because it could be super meta if it was overbuffed. So it potentially be very easy to, like we've seen with the Inugamis, the water Inugami, the fire Inugami. It could become too over meta if it's too meta if it's overbuffed. I don't know if they want another Trikaru everything meta, but that would be the new Trikaru meta. Is just the triple wind elementals. They don't team up with that much stuff. It wouldn't be the same thing, but it's potentially could be overbuffed. But anyway, we can actually keep going because there's still so much more stuff. There's still a lot more that can use buffs. Weapon Masters are still finding their place, even though some seem to not be as exciting as others. Aaliyah, which is the Water Totem. Nisha, which is the Fire Dryad. Scarlet, which is the Fire Cannon Girl. Natalie, which is the Light Assassin. Those and many more could all use some buffs, and we'd be here all day if we were talking about all of them. But I do think that we have a decent chance to actually get some of these units buffed in, because the last one was pretty good. The one before that was pretty good. The one before those two were terrible. But at least it seems like Comtuous is paying attention, and they want to take community feedback into consideration. Finally, after 7.5 years. They want to take community feedback into consideration when they're doing balance patches. So I think that I can be a little bit hopeful that we might actually see some of these units get buffed to be relevant and usable in this next upcoming balance patch. I don't know when it's going to be. According to Comtuous, it's going to be soon. That they've mentioned in the Death Note. And also I think that we could see a correlation between the balance patch and, because I was looking at the data, and it's not necessarily always at the same day of the week that they give these announcements and things like that. So I do think that we could see it in correlation to the Pokemon Legends Arceus release. So anyway, that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think needs to be buffed. And oh, you guys are going to go crazy. You're going to be like, everything needs to be buffed. All my LD units. Everything I own. Buff everything I own. And nerf everything I don't own. That's exactly what needs to happen. That's everyone's response. That's always everyone's response. Anyway, that's it for this one. See you guys always in the next one.